I was having this conversation recently where I said to people, Drake is the greatest hitmaker in hip hop history. And I was getting a little bit of pushback, but I'm like, I don't understand how you can debate it statistically. Like, you just can't. I don't think you can.
I'm going to start with this one because I don't think Drake is the greatest hitmaker in hip hop history.
Why is everybody debating that?
I think he's the greatest hitmaker in music history.
Okay, wow. All right, welcome back, people. This is Soundbites, part of the Album Mode podcast where we're talking about the music, the culture, the internet, how those three things intertwine to create the music culture that we have today. This is DeMar Grant, a.k.a. King Grant, a.k.a. The Bunny. And I'm here with my co-host, co-creator, Adriel Smiley, a.k.a. AdrielSmiley.com, a.k.a. Adriel Smiley Official, a.k.a. Mr. Smiley, a.k.a. The Godfather.
Yeah.
We are back. And also our producer, Agent Zero, Patient Zero, Chris. We're back and we're talking about one of the greatest artists ever, Drake. I want everybody to soak that in. Moment of silence for you haters.
Yeah.
Drake, as of now, with the song with J. Cole, First Person Shooter, going number 1 on the Hot 100, is tied with Michael Jackson for the most number 1s by a male soloist. Okay.
That's pretty wild.
And what also is wild is on that song, he's like, I'm 1 away from Jack. Nigga, beat it.
For him to call his shot is crazy.
So I think that, first of all, it's a crazy thing for that song to go number 1, particularly. Also, shout out to J. Cole for his first ever number 1.
Yep.
And I just want to explain to people that's why J. Cole is number 3 in the top 3 for me, because how are you going number 1 off of a Drake song and you can't do it yourself? But yeah, Drake, equivalent to Michael Jackson. I was having this conversation recently where I said to people, Drake is the greatest hitmaker in hip hop history. And I was getting a little bit of pushback, but I'm like, I don't understand how you can debate it statistically. Like, you just can't. I don't think you can.
I'm going to start with this one because I don't think Drake is the greatest hitmaker in hip hop history.
Why is everybody debating that?
I think he's the greatest hitmaker in music history.
Okay, wow.
I think if, let's look at this, forget about this record. Because this record, I think he will overtake. He did post that they don't count Sickle Mode, so this Sickle Mode would be...
Oh, yeah.
And would it be, 14? So, yeah, Sickle Mode would be 14, so they don't count that.
Yeah.
But he also has the record for, the most Hot 100 entries.
Right.
And to me, that is like, your thing as a hit maker is like, I'm going to be in the Hot 100, everything I drop. And Drake right now is at 320. Do you know who's number 2?
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift is correct at 212. So Drake is almost 100 more than Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Number 3, do you know who that is?
Beyonce.
Good guess. Okay. But number 3 is
Britney Spears.
Glee.
Oh, what?
Yep, Glee with 207. And everyone remembers Glee. That was a real era.
Yeah.
Can't believe they let them do that. And then rounding out the top 5, these two guys, I would say, are similar to each other. One is kind of the elder statesman of the other. We have mentioned one of them, at least on the podcast that we just recorded before this one.
Okay. Jay-Z?
No.
Okay, I thought we were talking about Jay-Z before.
He's younger. He's a younger artist.
Younger artist?
Younger than Jay-Z.
Younger than Jay-Z, yeah. But in this realm...
He's in this era, but he's, we mentioned him.
Kendrick Lamar.
I like where you're headed. Future is number 5.
Oh,
with 168.
Oh my God! Wait, hold on. Don't even let me get started on the Future top 50 deal.
And Lil Wayne is at number 4 with 185.
Okay.
And why I brought this up is this is in all of music. In the history of the Hot 100 chart. Yeah. So Drake is at the number 1 of anybody who has ever been involved in that chart. So I think you're right. Not only in hip hop history, he's the greatest hit maker, I think, in music history.
Right.
And I think we've known this for a while, but this is why I've always had this, I don't want to say theory, but this thing I've always mentioned of, I think everyone is getting pulled up from the Drake effect. And this is why I do think the difference in this era is that Mike never spoke to anybody about anything. If there was a Joe Budden during Michael's era, Michael wouldn't even, maybe behind the scenes.
Right.
But Michael would not go on an interview and say something about Joe. But I think Drake is, far and away ahead of the rest of hip hop right now.
Yeah.
In terms of what he's accomplishing on the charts, in the Hot 100, and even the Billboard 200. But he is kind of pulling up his peers when you compare the two. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned Kendrick before. Do you know how much Kendrick, how much Hot 100 entries he has?
Wait, how much did Future have?
168.
So I'm going to go 100.
I can't even tell you. He's not even in this top 50.
Okay.
That's kind of the point I'm making.
Okay.
Drake is number one all time in this.
Yeah.
Kendrick is not even in the top 15.
Right.
So, just from getting that, compare the two, look at it pulls Kendrick up historically.
Right.
And so I think this is really, it sets Drake apart, I think. Even J. Cole is getting this pull up.
Literally. This is his first ever.
You know what I mean? And so when I think about that, it's just like, yes, the music is the music, who he is a celebrity, but why he talks the shit he talks, I think is because of things like this,
I agree.
More than double the Hot 100 entries of some of his peers, bringing another GOAT, his first number one, just like that, calling his shot.
Yeah.
So I do think hopefully this puts people in a different space when they talk about Drake, because I think people sometimes need to see. There was that moment when he won 13 Billboard Awards in one night, and for a while everyone kind of was like giving him a little more respect. I do think that that's the downfall of this era, is like people don't revere him like a Mike, or the Beatles or that kind of thing. I think that he really suffers from the internet era where everyone's treating him like he's the same as everybody else in a sense. Yeah.
Here's his 13 number ones, because I think that it will also add in like the perspective.
I'm excited to hear this list.
Yeah. Okay. So, What's My Name with Rihanna featuring Drake. Then we have Work, Rihanna and Drake. This is why Drake is so hurt on For All the Dogs, by the way.
I forgot about What's My Name. That's crazy.
This collaboration with Rihanna. But then there's One Dance, banger, right? God's Plan, banger. Then we have Nice for What? That was going crazy. In My Feelings was going crazy, right? Then we have our Tootsie Slide, right? What's Next by Drake. Then Way Too Sexy by Drake.
What's Next went number one?
I'm reading the list straight off of Billboard right now, Billboard.com.
I did not remember that.
I'm looking at Billboard.com, my guy.
You know what? That was a big song.
Then we have Wait For You, which is Future featuring Drake and Thames. And then Jimmy Cooks, Drake and 21 Savage. And then we got Slime You Out. Slime You Out with SZA. And then we have First Person Shooter, Drake and J. Cole.
Wow.
So I think what you were talking about, where like Drake is suffering from the internet culture and the way the internet views his music. I agree. I think that because Drake exists in the streaming era, there is like I see a lot of discrediting his accolades, like a lot.
Yes, that's a good point.
Like a lot.
Point. Yeah.
As if streaming is somehow like a lesser form of music listening or acquisition or something like that. I don't know how you can discredit streaming and be like, oh, there should be a different list for streaming, blah, blah, blah. This is how literally everybody on the face of the planet listens to music now.
Yep.
This is how people listen to music. You stream it.
Yep.
You stream it on Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, fucking SoundCloud. You know what I mean? Like, this is where people listen to music now. And for people to be like, oh, it's not the same, or it's like, it's not the same as moving physicals. Buy his physicals then. Drake has physical albums.
Yep.
He has physical albums.
100%.
Right? You want to go buy Take Care? I had Take Care when we reviewed Drake, so he has physicals.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be like, oh, he doesn't move physical, blah, blah, blah. First of all, if they don't make the physicals, it's for a purpose because people are not buying it. Yeah. But artists like Drake has physicals.
Yeah, I think
Scorpion has a physical.
The discrediting is, I think, so. It's kind of like, what is Drake supposed to do about this? Yeah,
it's like,
you know what I mean? Like, that's what I always think of is like, Drake would rather be the CD era because those guys made a lot more money.
Exactly.
You know, and those numbers were even bigger. You know, now it's huge if someone sells, 300,000, 200,000 first week. You know, there was kind of BC level artists selling 500,000 first week in those days. So I do think it's kind of crazy that people discredit him. One thing I do want to bring up because, I'm a big Drake fan. So if we're going to get to show Drake some love, I'm going to step in. Okay. Now in 2013, Drake dropped this song that I'm sure a lot of you know called 5 a.m. in Toronto.
Yeah.
And on that song, in the first couple of bars, he says, most number ones ever, how long did it really take me? And he was referring to having the most number ones on the hip hop singles chart in rap history. Now that was in 2013. Drake's first project came out in 2009. So if you think about, to reach that point, he says it, most number ones ever, how long did it really take me? Now we're fast forwarding 10 years to first person shooter going number one and I'm calling a shot with Michael Jackson. This is a very hip hop thing to do of like, call your shot for your success. But I do think this is like, a success train like we haven't seen in hip hop.
Literally, never.
I think that someone I always think of is Jay. Jay was one of my first favorite rappers. And he had this streak of having, number one albums. I think he's at 14 right now. And Drake needs one more to tie with him. And, Jay, once I got older, I realized he wasn't always that popular. He grew into becoming that guy. I think about someone like Kanye who was overlooked for a long time. And we haven't seen anyone like this hip hop who just wins and wins and wins and wins. And so I don't know if he's going to go away. Who knows? We'll talk about Drake next on this podcast, because he's apparently going to be hiding out for a while. But I do think that, the perception of how we talk about his either decline or lack of, it really takes away from the fact that we've never seen a rapper. He's probably the biggest rapper of all time.
Yeah, he is.
In terms of popularity.
Yeah, definitely. It's like not even probably he is. Like there is like Drake is the biggest rapper. We would say like number one rapper technically. No. But in scale, there's nobody that's even close.
Yeah. And I think about that and I'm just like, that as hip hop we should champion that. That's kind of the point I'm making is like, as hip hop, we should champion that. Having our, our Diddy's, our Kanye's, our Jay-Z's. That was amazing when we had, people of that ilk, being the top artists, top acts of the day. Drake being the biggest artist in the world and coming from hip hop is something we should champion because, and we may not be the number one genre for the foreseeable future, but having the number one artist is, still something to celebrate.
Yeah, this one thing that I realized, and it's also, remember, that we're in the 50th anniversary of hip-hop, right, this year. One thing I haven't seen, or it doesn't seem this way, is like, there is no collectivist hurrah about the hip-hop artist. It's a hip-hop artist becoming the biggest artist ever, basically.
Yeah.
There is no collective, wow, this is such a big moment for the genre, especially in the 50th anniversary of the genre. Nobody is saying. I have not seen that ever. I think this is the first time I'm even.
Yeah.
This is being expressed.
No, I haven't seen that.
Right? It's so weird to me that like there is that the disconnect that existed between Drake and hip hop at the beginning of his career persists still. Nobody is like, oh my God, this is such an amazing moment for hip hop. I can't believe we've gotten this far from the 50-year anniversary. Again, this is happening on the 50-year anniversary.
This is kind of poetic in a sense, like happening now. Yeah.
Like people are not even making that connection any sort of way. Like it's just kind of like, okay, like it's almost a negative connotation. Like, wow, he's passing Michael Jackson. Like how is this happening to music? Nobody's gonna think about Drake's music in the same sense of Michael Jackson. Like, there's all this negative connotation. Like, yo, bro, like, we're up. Like, are we not up? What happened to that? I thought we were up right now.
You make a great point. I think that's something that hip hop kind of has their heels dug in.
Yeah.
Hip hop took a stance against Drake, and you see it with the Charlemagnes of the world, the Joe Buddens of the world. Yeah. They took their stance against Drake, and they're not budging. Yeah. And I think we got to budge. I think it's time to budge.
Yeah.
I think it's time to budge.
Here's the thing. We're going to champion it. Also,
yes.
Drake, Canadian. We're also Canadian. I just feel like this is a big deal. This is
a huge deal.
Huge for Canadian hip hop. This is like, we're in the golden era.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would say, like, no offense to Tory Lanez, but Tory Lanez spent so much time in America,
Mm-hmm.
not the same Canadian come up as someone like Drake who
champions Toronto. You know, you know, he talks about every album covers on the CN Tower.
Yeah.
Right. You know, songs like Western Road Flows, like, you know, like he embraces being Canadian. He is a Canadian person. He is from Toronto.
Yeah.
So as Canadians, you know, people that live in the GTA,
Yeah.
people that are from Toronto, there should be like, you know, Drake is probably gonna get a statue. When he's dead, he's gonna have a statue. I would be shocked. I would be genuinely
I would
shocked.
say he's probably gonna have it before he's dead.
Yeah, before he's dead, he's gonna have a statue, right? So this is like a line on the statue, bro.
Yeah.
This is gonna be on the plaque, you know? Like when he's dead or on that statue, it's gonna be like, this person has the most number one Hot 100s in the history
of the chart.
Of the chart.
Of the chart.
Of the chart. Not even the genre. The chart.
The chart. And you know,
right? Surpassing Michael Jackson. It's a huge deal.
I thought about a couple of years ago, there's the Heritage Prize we have in Canada, and it's like the best, you know, older Canadian album. You know, and you know, the Tragically Hip has won it in the past, Rush has won it in the past, you know, bands like that.
Right.
And there was one year where Drake was not nominated, and people kind of had a little bit of a thing about it. And, you know, one of the older bands, which band he was from, he said, you know, Drake has not even a chance of being in this. Like, who is Drake?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, Drake has kind of got this reputation of being more like popular than good, you know, which I think has kind of hurt him as well.
Yeah.
He's definitely both,
Yeah.
but I think how popular he is
overshadows how good he ever was.
And as well, I think that just someone being that popular from, again, Canada and from the genre of hip hop, we have not seen this before. Like I always say we haven't seen this before because, you know, we've had, you know, a big rapper from New York before. You know, when 50 came out, we've never had a rapper from New York go platinum. That's not, that wasn't what it was, you know? And when you think about, you know, someone from LA becoming a big movie star, it's not like this is the first time. Like, you know, these are things that happen all the time. A hip hop artist being the biggest artist in the world for a decade, points to the time it's happened before, and a Canadian hip hop artist being the biggest art, you know, we haven't seen that before. So I think that is something that maybe that's part of it. You know, it's like hip hop has its roots in New York. I always say in hip hop, you do something in New York, it counts as 0.5. You know, just because that's actually the birth of hip hop. Not many art forms have a birthplace that's, you know, an actual place. And so maybe that's part of it is like Drake is from Canada, Toronto. Yeah. That was not a part of.
Yeah, that's not part of the canon of hip hop's music. Well, it is now.
It is.
It is now.
You know, it is now.
The thing is, you cannot tell the history of hip hop without.
No.
Yeah, you can. You're at the point now where you cannot tell the history of hip hop without Drake, without Toronto, without Canada. And I think that's
a good point.
And I think that there is like a little, I don't want to say xenophobic, but I think there is definitely like a skepticism. It's like this guy that was on TV, he was an actor, right? And he's not a hard, you know, like a hard body rapper like a Kendrick Lamar, Joe, you know, like, you know, any hard body rapper from New York, right? He's more of like a hybrid from a different country, is somehow the biggest artist in the history of an American chart.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like, what? Huh? How? Who? What? You know what I mean? And people who are having the most conversation about hip hop and just like this overall sequence of events, they're American.
Yep. 100%.
Right? So there is like there's an alienness to this for them because this is a guy that's not from there.
Yeah.
Right? Who has completely dominated an American chart thoroughly, like in every aspect.
And I had to double down, like, this has not really been seen that much in music in general, if I'm being honest. Like, a lot of artists have a time where they maybe dip away a little bit, or, you know, they go lower and then come back up, kind of like Nas. Yeah. Or you think about Snoop, Drop It Like It's Hot is 10 years after his first album, you know, and people are, that's the first Snoop hit for us, you know? So it's like, that's what's more normal. An artist having this kind of 15-year sustained run is not normal. And then as well, I think that there is this like, and we have like in hip hop, our Madonnas, our David Bowies, that's the Jay-Z, that's the Kanye. What Drake is doing is honestly over here compared to what those guys have done. And so I think, again, this is completely new territory. I think maybe once he takes a break, we'll kind of appreciate it more. I do think there's going to be that void. I want to speak to that void quickly because we do got to get to more serious stuff. I think Travis Scott is going to be the person who fills that void and fills the Drake spot.
Right.
I think in terms of popularity, he's the clear guy there. This is, I think, the first year in a few years that someone actually outsold Drake first week numbers, and that was Travis Scott. So I think I don't want to say passing the torch, but Travis Scott will be the guy in that Drake spot if Drake does take a break. Now, they had 7 songs from, what's that name of the album? Fat D.
Yeah. For all the dogs.
For all the dog. There you go. In the top 10.
Yeah.
First of all, the songs that ended up in this top 10 did not match our review at all. If you listen to our review, the songs that we liked, not many of them are in this top 10. But this is just, we're going to cap off, Drake's dominance. We're getting to more serious things. At number 10, they had Fear of Heights. At number 8, Daylight. Already. Number 6, Slime You Out. Number 5, Calling for You. Number 3, Virginia Beach. Number 2, I Don't Give a Fuck. And 1, First Person Shooter.
Are those any of the songs that we liked? I'm trying to think. I don't think so. Except for First Person Shooter.
First Person Shooter was probably the one.
Virginia
Beach too.
Yeah.
And so it's like this is where Drake is at.
Yeah.
It's like we literally did a whole review on the 23 song album, and 2 out of the songs that we liked are in the top 10.
Yeah.
But 5 that we said are in the top 10.
Yeah.
So that he's definitely in a whole different stratosphere. And what's going on with Bandcamp absolutely will not affect him at all. I didn't know this was going on until you put this on my radar, and I was like, okay, this just happened. WNBA Finals was happening. Survivor 45. Gave myself a little bit of a leeway. But this is pretty serious. Like, can you kind of prep the people on like this whole Bandcamp thing and like what's really happened over the past, days, week?
Okay, so Bandcamp is a music platform for independent artists to host their music, sell merch, sell records, like physicals, like vinyl. And then there was also an aspect of Bandcamp that there was like an editorial side. People who were writing articles about like these low key scenes. You're talking about fucking, I don't know, like black metal in West Virginia or some shit like that. That's where you would find it is on Bandcamp, right? They would be talking about that, or people would be writing about that. They had like a legitimate editorial, like editors, writers, full-time people. Like this was a real publication. So that existed. That was cool, because you're getting like people who would never get discovered or get written about or anything like that. There was like a place specifically for that, and it was making money as a music publication, and it also had like it was basically a publisher. It was like a publishing
crazy to say because I don't think any of the other streaming services have something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And it was more low key. Again, it was small artists, independent artists. So that existed, and we were all happy. Right. I bought Men I Trust records from there.
Big shout out Men I Trust.
And I've listened to Men I Trust through Bandcamp before. And basically it had been purchased by Epic Games last year. Right. And it seems I read an article recently, the sum of money was around $270, $280, $290 million, which is a big time payout for a music pub.
Yes.
Okay. So it got bought. And then, they were like, we're just trying to maintain, we're trying to make sure everything stays the same, blah, blah, blah. The usual jargon that you get during an acquisition. We're not trying to change anything, even though things are always going to change every time.
Yep.
And then, so they had it for a year. Everything seemed copacetic until this year, where Epic Games basically was doing layoffs, like layoffs in the video game department, layoffs, everywhere, because they had projected as though they were going to make more money than they did. They're being overly optimistic.
Good old projections.
They're quote unquote overly optimistic. About what they were going to, the revenue they were going to generate. So they basically overhired. That's what they're saying.
Yeah,
that's what they've said. And in this like layoff sequence, they sold Bandcamp to this company,
Song Trader,
right? And in the selling of Bandcamp to Song Trader, they have laid off 50% of the people that work at Bandcamp. That entire editorial side of Bandcamp, dead.
Yep.
Dead. Every writer, from what I've read, all the writers in like editorial gone.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a sad time. I mean, this is indicative of a lot of what is happening in music journalism, where I feel like every single door that was once open or even like cracked open is now slamming shut. And this is just another one of those doors where, again, we're talking about independent artists, bro.
Yeah.
Independent artists. There are people employed full time to write about independent small artists.
No, that would be us. That would be us. We would be the people being fired.
Right? So I just wanted like everybody to grasp that, even if you're not in the music, if you're in the music industry or you just listen to our podcast or whatever, it's like there were people employed full time to write about people who like have 50,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. And those people are out of a job.
Yeah.
Right? So all of those people that were making that music, you're not getting covered anymore. Because I hate to break it to you, Pitchfork is not covering you, bro.
Yeah.
Respectfully. I say all due respect. Like I want that to be
Billboard,
they're not covering you.
Yeah.
Right? Rolling Stone, they're not covering you.
Yeah.
So that collective of which is the largest group of people actually of independent small artists are no longer going to be covered, and those people that like had that job in writing, those people are fucked. Like they're gonna be doing like something else, right?
Yeah. First, I like that you brought up Men I Trust because they're actually the group I literally think of when I think of Bandcamp.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
They come to mind first. But I think that this is kind of, it remains to be seen. I think I want to be optimistic about this because Songtradr is at least a music company. When Epic Games bought them last year in March, I was kind of like, okay, maybe it's something I don't know about Epic Games, but it is. I don't see the correlation here. So Songtradr is a licensing company, so maybe this will be a way for a lot of the acts on Bandcamp to make money through licensing because that is a huge revenue stream for independent artists. Who can't do huge shows or don't stream millions of streams. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know if this is still the case, but there was in 2020, half of Bandcamp's revenue was from physical sales.
Yeah.
And you talk about
That's insane.
You talk about the vinyl you got. Like I know a lot of people who sell their merch on their vinyl on there. And so it's like that technically we'll see how that is affected from losing the editorial staff. Because I do think the correlation of people hearing about groups from those people and finding out about a band through the editorial staff, we're gonna really see the effect of that.
Yeah. Because there are people who go to Bandcamp and they'll like read about something and then they'll be like, okay, let me check out the music.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, it's sick. And then they'll actually buy it.
Yeah.
People who use Bandcamp actually purchase music.
100%.
They actually purchase music.
Yeah. And so I think the licensing part of this through Songtradr, now they haven't said anything about what they're going to do with that and how that's going to work. There's a lot of speculation and we're kind of assuming that they'll have this whole library of Bandcamp artists and they'll be able to kind of draw from that for these licensing deals. But again, I think licensing is a avenue for independent artists that personally, independent artists that I work with, that I kind of let them know about of like a way that you can make money even if your song doesn't have the most streams.
Right.
So my, optimistic hope here is that, a lot of independent artists who otherwise would be making, $1,000 a month may now make $5,000 a month because their song ends up on, the new season of Euphoria.
Right. I appreciate your optimism so much. I love your optimism. I need that optimism in my life. I think, but you know what? The thing is, you kind of need to be optimistic because the doom and gloom, which is, I would say, more close to our reality, is actually extremely harrowing.
It's scary.
It's harrowing. It's harrowing if you're a journalist, music journalist. Like this past, I want to say year and a half, if you're a music journalist, is like staring into the abyss. Okay, it's like, whoa, what is going on? Because the dynamic of music journalism or just music adjacent content creation is so drastically changing that this section of journalism is being just like
evaporate,
but not even evaporate, like morphed in a way that is very crazy. Like, for example, this is a form of music journal. Like what we do, this podcast is a form of music journalism. And it kind of exists because there is no other, like instead of writing reviews, we talk about it. Because we're like, oh, people talk about music. We made that connection. We're like, oh, people talk about music. We don't, like you read about music on Twitter, right? Personally. You read about music on Twitter and like maybe you'll read an article because your favorite artist is, you know, doing an interview. But when it comes to music and like conversation about music, usually talking to like your friends, or people that, you know, you've seen about it, right? Versus reading about it. So this is also like kind of like a symptom where we're like, okay, well, let's do a podcast. A podcast would be sick and we'll talk about the albums. Because we talk about albums.
Literally.
Right? So I think that, you know, seeing these other things like evaporate, which I would consider this an evaporation.
100%.
Like 50% of their entire staff is gone. Like you just got shown the door. Is like it's like it makes you nervous, bro. Like your fingers start to like tingle.
It kind of makes you think about like how things are changing as a whole. Yeah. Because, you know, behind the scenes things are getting a little different. Yeah. In journalism, the budgets that some publications are getting are changing like drastically. So
and it's not even just music. It's the industry at large.
The industry at large for sure.
But I think the music space, I would say, is most susceptible to being minimized. I think it's trying to corporatize the way I say this, but like it's most susceptible to being minimized because it's culture, right? And people read about culture, but a businessman always reads about business. Yeah. They want to know what's happening in Thailand, what's happening in, you know, China, what's happening in England. Yeah. Like they're always going to be reading about that. When you experience music, like you experience business, you're sitting at a desk, you're like on a computer always. Yeah. Right? When you experience music or any sort of like film or TV or something like that, you experience it outside, a collective, you're watching it or you're listening to it, right? You're not sitting at a computer. You're actively moving around, listening to a podcast, moving around, listening to music. You're at a club listening to music. Yeah. You know, you're not sitting at a computer.
Yeah. It's a communal experience.
Yeah. So there is like, it's not as hard and fast when it comes to when it's being written about and stuff like that. And I think that makes it more easy, like for a person that is not involved in it. Yeah. Or doesn't have like a huge value in music or even cultural journalism overall, they're like, that's the first thing you can cut because it doesn't appear to affect your bottom line immediately until people are like the only people that show up to buy your thing are wearing a suit. Yeah. Right? Versus wearing a t-shirt and like, you know, and shorts and like rides a skateboard.
Yeah. Songtrader put out a statement saying this is business as usual. Right. Obviously, you know, people didn't really like that. Right. Again, I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible with this, even though this is not good news, you know, in any way, shape, or form. One thing I do want to highlight is that their statement did not include any information on Bandcamp Fridays. Right. And Bandcamp Fridays is the first Friday of every month where the bands, the acts receive 100% of the profits. And, you know, obviously Bandcamp Fridays have been huge for a lot of artists, especially during the pandemic. That kept a lot of people's lights on. And so that's, you know, those are the kind of things we want to see. Are those going to remain the same with Songtrader taking over Bandcamp? Yeah. And another thing they had in their statement was they called it, you know, almost like a merging or a partnership more than Songtrader buying Bandcamp. You know, I'm sure, you know, that all that editorial staff that got fired would extremely disagree on that language. But I think, you know, things like Bandcamp Fridays are the things you want to see. Are those going to remain the same? Will the splits change? So, because I do think that, you know, the artists on Bandcamp, some of them have been able to make, you know, living off of this. Yeah. And Bandcamp is now their like preferred, you know, choice of streaming service because they do so well over there. You know, some people spend a lot of time on Bandcamp, some a lot of time on Spotify, some is Apple Music, and everyone's different. Yeah. Bandcamp has been a home for a lot of artists, and I just want to hope that it can remain a home. That's kind of my hope in all this, is that, you know, that enough things do not change in terms of the actual business for the artists, that it can still be viable for them. I think it will be tougher, of course, without the journalists and the editorial staff pointing people in the direction of some of these artists. That, you know,
discovery just became that much harder.
Yeah, we just know from this business that plays a huge part in helping artists out. But, my hope is that at least having Song Trader being a part of the music business, they can turn this into more of a profit for Bandcamp.
Right.
Because I do think, there may be another business model that works for Bandcamp. Mm-hmm. Maybe it can. I don't know what that business model is. I feel like they were doing okay before.
Yes, extreme. It was a profitable business.
100%.
Booming business that was like growing.
Mm-hmm.
And people who were writing about music journalism there. I feel like that is like one of the hard, like I'm really trying to nail through is like, this was a profiting publication that wrote about music.
Yep, 100%.
That is now laying off 50%. Just like 50% of all people.
Yeah.
That worked out.
Yeah.
Like 50% of all people that worked at Bandcamp.
And so I wonder what that will do, because that's, if you think from a business standpoint, that's a lot of wages that you now, have some money to spend in a sense. Mm-hmm. And what will happen through that. But, the last time we talked about Bandcamp, it wasn't good news. The next time we talk about Bandcamp, let's hope that it is. Because every time Bandcamp makes it into sound bites, it's bad news. It's like that cousin that keeps coming over. Yeah. Anytime you see him, it's like, you got in another car accident? Yeah. You had another concussion? Mm-hmm. So, this is just hoping that we get some good news from Bandcamp.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's kind of sad. But, I don't know. I feel bad. Like, I feel bad about it, especially for the people who are like the writers. Bro.
Yeah, 100%.
Because if you're you can be a writer and you can have like multiple aspects to like the journalism or just like the media work that you do.
Yeah.
But some people like they write.
That's like their thing.
Yeah, they write and like that's it. And like you had a place to write about again. Like
you got a home. Yeah.
You're talking about like Kansas City. I don't know, like house music or some shit. Like it was like one of those bastions where you just like wrote about the most obscure things that people were like sick, right? And you don't get that literally anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So love to all the people who got laid off at Bandcamp and the people who are still sticking out at Bandcamp. I guess I think that it's a sad story, and we gotta find more avenues for music journalism. I think that's gonna be. I think that's the next frontier. That's like the only thing I can think of.
And I think what I really took away from this, and we're gonna talk about, I don't want something a lot less serious after this, but I think what I took from this is that the industry is gonna have to change. Yeah, I think that the industry is going through just a seismic change in general, where it's gonna be less of the tweaks and something for better or for worse. Yeah, things are gonna have to change. So I'm being hopeful about that change. Hopefully things get better. Yeah. I want to say that there is someone who I think is hopeful about the future. And I think that's you talking about Adonis.
Oh my God.
Because you giving him a little credit for the bars. Yeah. Adonis, you compared it to a little Bow Wow. That's what I'll say.
Okay, well, slow down. I needed to slow down for a second. I was comparing him to Bow Wow because I was like thinking about who else was like making music at like 6, 7 years old. Mm-hmm. And I was like thinking of Bow Wow, and I was like Raven Simone, Michael Jackson. I think he was slightly older than 6 when he was first starting, but
yeah.
So it was just interesting to see a child of we were mentioned earlier, like literally the biggest artist in the world, making music. Whether or not they will continue making it will be a question, and also like. I wonder if like Adonis is like how interested he is in making music versus just like
that's my question, else, man.
I think it's a very interesting dynamic. But yeah, I think that's it. Because like when I listened to the song and I was like, this is a 6-year-old made the song.
100%. Oh, yeah. That's what I'll say. That I gotta give Drake credit that it's clearly like a kid's song. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like if it got hella serious. And it was like, I don't know, Adonis featuring like,
like honestly 21 Savage would be like, what?
Like at least it was, still not kid around.
Yeah.
I had this tweet that I think, we'll look back at it and remember. I said 10 years from now, Adonis is gonna tell us he ain't want nothing to do with that song and nothing to do with that video. And I think that's a part of it. I always think about, the kids of celebrities or kids of artists or kids of performers. And you often see it, even you think about, I and Eagle and his son Noah go into that same profession, and it's a lot of us who our parents are maybe not performers, not entertainers. We don't always do what our parents do. But sometimes when the kids are, you see that very, very often.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that because, as a kid growing up, you get to the point where you're like, listen, I'm going to have to work.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a job at some point. It's going to happen to me. And when it comes time for me to hit the workforce, what do I want to do? Now, what my dad does looks like fun. And he looks like he's having a great time.
Yeah.
He never complains about going to work.
Yeah.
Now my friend's dad,
not so much.
Not so much. So I think there may be something there just because, come out from perspective, it's like kids usually see what their parents do and that kind of has some impact on what they choose as a career.
Yeah.
And, most of our parents aren't always doing fun jobs.
Yeah.
His dad is.
Yeah.
And so that may be a part of it. But this was not really good. But he's 6.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you say? Like, he's a 6. That's why I'm like, he's 6. It's a 6-year-old making a song. I think that if you compare him to others, I feel like it's unfair because, again, he's a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting to like look back and be like, oh, Lil Bow Wow, what was he doing back then? Like Michael Jackson when he was a kid, Raven Simone when she was a kid. It was just really interesting, right, to see that like, and even Lil Wayne when he was a kid, right? He was older, but still Lil Wayne when he was a kid. So it's interesting to see another entry into the youth hip hop genre.
This is not an entry to me.
The entry to youth hip hop, baby.
This is not an entry to me. It's like when I think it was 444 that Blue had like, something on that. That's not an entry to me.
Okay.
I think we got to have something like concrete, real, like Lil Bow Wow Beware the Dog. That's an entry. That's there. Crisscross.
Yeah.
That's an entry. You know what I mean? Even Earl when Earl was 15, that's an entry. This is not really gonna go in there, but
we'll see.
I gotta say this. Shout out to Grady Dick being in the video.
Yeah.
He's getting all the press right now for the Raptors.
Yeah.
I think that my only thing about this is Adonis was already recognizable. We see him in Drake's
he's appearing
Instagram
everywhere.
story everywhere. That's the only thing I have some worry about. I think, it's obviously in a different era.
Yeah.
So everyone's going to be on the internet regardless. I think, even seeing it with, President Obama's daughters.
Beyonce's daughters, Kim Kardashian's kids.
It's all different, but I do think that there is almost like a veil behind of like, they're not as famous on their own. It's like you might recognize a kid if they're standing with the mom.
Yeah.
But if you just see the kid, are you going to start screaming, Blue? Like, that's a different type of person who's like that. I think Adonis being so recognizable, I think is going to have some diminishing returns because how is he going to even go to Wonderland? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's 6 now. He's only spending time with his dad and just a couple of friends. But, before you know it, he's going to be a teenager and trying to go outside and do hood rat stuff with his friends. And he's going to be extremely recognizable. So
yeah, he is. I would say Adonis has a distinct look. Like he's very, like maybe it's because he's so famous already that he's already distinct to us.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I feel like if I saw him,
100%.
I'd be able to like, I'm like, is that Drake's son?
And it's like, having like, if you're a child star, or we talk about child star, that's a different story.
Yeah.
If he's just chilling, and this is his life, I wonder how that's gonna go for him. Yeah. So that's the only thing I'll say about this video is interested to see how that develops. And of course we live in Toronto, so
Yeah, so it's already a thing for us. Like everybody just like knows.
No, listen, we are about, I wouldn't even say 18 months. We're probably like 4 or 5 months away from an Adonis sighting at the Eaton Center. Like
yeah, probably like yeah, for sure. He's gonna become more and more prominent, I think.
Yeah, and
unless he decides to become secluded.
I don't trust people, man. People just don't have any chill, any, as the Jamaicans say, any bratupsy. None of that is going on. So seeing how a child deals with that level of fame,
it's gonna be a tough one.
Very interested to see. This has been, a good episode of Soundbites. I feel like we got showing some love at the beginning.
Yeah.
We came in with some serious stuff in the middle, and then at the end,
keep it light. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for tuning into Soundbites today. Make sure you follow us on the Instagrams @AlbumModePod, Twitter @AlbumModePod, TikTok @AlbumModePod, Everywhere on socials at Album Mode Pod. Okay, we're out there. Come look, come see, and make sure you follow us or subscribe to us on YouTube at Album Mode Pod. We're just like living it up at Album Mode Pod everywhere, right? I'm going to make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the video. Make sure you rate our podcast 5 stars, not a single star less. And Adriel, make sure you know yourself and know your worth.
Later days.